The steam was still rising from his dark skin when Simone Patterson saw her husband David step out of her best friend's bathroom. Water droplets rolled down his chest like tiny betrayals, each one hitting the hardwood floor of Rochelle's apartment with a sound that seemed to echo through Simone's entire world. The white towel wrapped around his waist was the same one she had bought him for Christmas last year, the one with his initials embroidered in gold thread that she had spent hours picking out at the department store downtown. Time stopped. The keys in Simone's hand fell to the floor with a metallic clatter that seemed to shake the walls. Her daughter Nia's artwork, the drawing she had come to show Auntie Rochelle, fluttered from her other hand like a wounded bird. The crayon marks of purple flowers and stick figures suddenly looked so innocent, so pure, in a moment that felt anything but. David's face went from relaxed satisfaction to pure terror in the span of a heartbeat. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Behind him, through the crack in the bathroom door, Simone could see another figure moving. Rochelle, her best friend since they were 8 years old, the woman who had held her hand through her mother's funeral, who had been her maid of honor, who had helped her pick out the very nightgown she wore on her wedding night. Simone. David's voice cracked like a teenage boy's. Baby, I can explain. But Simone wasn't hearing his words. She was hearing 24 years of friendship crumbling. She was hearing 12 years of marriage shattering like glass on concrete. She was hearing her daughter's voice from just that morning. Mommy, why does Daddy always smell like Auntie Rochelle's perfume when he comes home late? The smell hit her then, that familiar scent of vanilla and jasmine that always lingered in Rochelle's apartment, the same smell that had been clinging to David's clothes for months. The same smell that Simone had convinced herself was just from him helping Rochelle move furniture, fix her sink, be the good friend and brother-in-law he had always been. Her knees wanted to buckle, but something deep inside her, something passed down from generations of strong black women who had survived worse betrayals, kept her standing. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, "Baby girl, when life tries to break you, you stand tall. You breathe. You think. Then you act. How long?" The words came out in a whisper that seemed to fill the entire apartment. Rochelle appeared behind David, wrapped in a silk robe that Simone recognized as the one they had bought together during their girls' trip to Atlanta last summer. Her best friend's face was streaked with tears, her usually perfect hair disheveled. The gold necklace around her neck, the one Simone had given her for her birthday, caught the afternoon light streaming through the window. "Simone, please." Rochelle's voice was thick with emotion. "It's not what you think." But it was exactly what she thought. It was every fear that had crept into her mind during those lonely nights when David worked late. It was every suspicious phone call, every changed password, every time he had pulled away when she tried to touch him. It was every time Rochelle had asked just a little too many questions about David's schedule, his likes and dislikes, his dreams and fears. The apartment suddenly felt like a museum of their friendship. Photos of them from high school graduation, from Simone's wedding day, from family barbecues and birthday parties. Pictures of Nia calling Rochelle auntie, and climbing on her lap. All of it now felt like a lie, a beautiful lie that had been carefully constructed while the two people she trusted most in the world had been living a secret life behind her back. David took a step forward, his hand reaching out to her, but Simone stepped back. She couldn't bear to have him touch her, not when his hands had just been on her best friend's body, not when his lips had just been whispering promises and sweet nothings to another woman. "How long?" she repeated, her voice stronger now, filled with the kind of power that comes from hitting rock bottom and realizing you have nothing left to lose. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. It was the kind of silence that exists right before a tornado hits, when all the birds stop singing and the air becomes thick with possibility and destruction. In that silence, Simone could hear her own heart breaking, could feel the foundation of her entire life shifting beneath her feet. 6 months, David finally whispered, and those two words hit Simone like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of her best friend looking her in the eye and asking about her marriage while she was destroying it from the inside. Half a year of David coming home to their bed, to their daughter, to their life, after being with another woman. After being with her woman, the one person in the world Simone had trusted with all her secrets, all her fears, all her hopes and dreams. Simone thought about all the times in the past 6 months when she had felt something was wrong, when her intuition had screamed at her that something was off. She remembered the night she had called Rochelle crying because she felt distant from David, and how Rochelle had comforted her, telling her that marriage had its ups and downs, that she just needed to be patient and understanding. She remembered the family barbecue last month where she had watched David and Rochelle interact and felt a strange pang of something she couldn't name. The way they had avoided eye contact, the way Rochelle had been unusually quiet, The way David had seemed nervous and jumpy every time Simone came near them. All the signs had been there. All the red flags had been waving right in front of her face, and she had chosen to ignore them because she couldn't imagine a world where her husband and her best friend would betray her so completely. The afternoon sun was starting to set through the window, casting long shadows across the apartment floor. Those shadows seemed to represent everything dark and hidden that had been lurking in her life without her knowledge. Everything she had believed to be true, about her marriage, about her friendship, about herself, had been stripped away in the space of a few heartbeats. "I need to sit down," Simone said quietly, but her legs gave out before she could make it to the couch. She sank to the floor right there in the entryway, her back against the door, her head in her hands. The engagement ring David had given her 12 years ago caught the light, and for the first time since he had proposed, she wanted to take it off and throw it across the room. This was her rock bottom. This was the moment when everything she had built her adult life on had been revealed as sand, shifting and unreliable and ultimately worthless. But as she sat there on that floor, surrounded by the debris of her shattered world, something inside her began to stir. It was small at first, just a tiny flame of determination that her grandmother had lit in her when she was just a little girl. "You are stronger than you know," Mama Rose used to tell her. "You come from a line of women who survived slavery, who survived Jim Crow, who survived everything this world threw at them. Their strength runs in your blood." Simone lifted her head and looked at the two people who had betrayed her. They were both crying now, both looking at her with expressions of guilt and regret and something that might have been love. But love without respect wasn't love at all. Love without honesty wasn't love at all. "I need you both to get dressed," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to talk." 20 minutes later, they sat in Rochelle's living room like strangers. The same couch where Simone had spent countless hours laughing with her best friend now felt like foreign territory. David sat across from her in the chair where he used to sit during family game nights, when they were all just friends and everything was simple and pure. Rochelle had made tea chamomile, Simone's favorite, but the cup sat untouched in her hands. The steam rising from it reminded her too much of the steam that had been rising from David's skin when this nightmare began. "I need to understand," Simone began, her voice careful and controlled. "I need to understand how two people who claim to love me could do this to me." David leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. He had put on his clothes, the same clothes he had been wearing when he left their house this morning, claiming he was going to help his brother move some furniture. The same lie he had probably told dozens of times over the past 6 months. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he said quietly. "Simone, you have to believe me. We never planned this." "But it did happen," Simone replied. "For 6 months it happened. Over and over and over again." Rochelle spoke for the first time since they had sat down. "I hate myself for this, Simone. I hate myself more than you could ever hate me." Simone turned to look at her childhood friend, the woman who had been like a sister to her for more than 2 decades. Rochelle's face was puffy from crying, her usually flawless makeup smeared and streaked. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, as if the weight of her betrayal had physically shrunk her. "Tell me how it started," Simone said. "I need to know everything." David and Rochelle exchanged a look, and even in her pain, Simone caught the intimacy in that glance. It was the kind of look that spoke of shared secrets, of inside jokes, of a connection that ran deeper than friendship or family obligation. It was the kind of look that should have been reserved for her. "It was after Mama Rose's birthday party," Rochelle began, her voice barely above a whisper. "You had gone to bed early because Nia was sick, remember? David stayed to help me clean up." Simone did remember. It had been a beautiful day, her grandmother's 75th birthday celebration in the backyard of her childhood home. 3 generations of their family had gathered to celebrate the woman who had raised Simone after her parents died. Nia had come down with a fever that evening, and Simone had taken her home early, leaving David to help with the cleanup. "We were talking about how proud you would have been of the party," David continued. "How much your mama and daddy would have loved to see their granddaughter so happy and surrounded by family." It was true. Simone's parents had died in a car accident when she was 16, and Mama Rose had stepped in to finish raising her. The birthday party had been a celebration not just of her grandmother's life, but of the resilience and love that had carried their family through tragedy. "We started talking about our parents," Rochelle said. "About how death changes everything, about how precious time is. And then we started talking about our fears." "What fears?" Simone asked, though part of her didn't want to know. David looked up at her for the first time since they had begun talking. His eyes were red-rimmed and full of pain, but there was something else there too, something that looked almost like relief at finally being able to tell the truth. "I was afraid I was losing you," he said simply. "Over the past year you had been so distant, so focused on your job, on Nia, on everyone and everything except us. I felt like I was disappearing from your life." "Please don't give up on us," Rochelle whispered. "Either of us. We love you, Simone. We both love you so much." "Love doesn't look like this," Simone replied, gesturing between the three of them. "This isn't love. I don't know what it is, but it isn't love." She walked to the door, her legs feeling stronger with each step. Behind her, she could hear David and Rochelle whispering urgently to each other, but she didn't turn around. Whatever they had to say to each other, she didn't need to hear it. As she reached for the doorknob, David called her name. "Simone, please. Don't tell Nia about this. Whatever happens between us, she doesn't need to know." Simone paused, her hand on the doorknob. Their 8-year-old daughter, who loved her daddy and her Auntie Rochelle with all her innocent heart. How was she going to explain to Nia why Auntie Rochelle wouldn't be coming around anymore? How was she going to explain why Mommy and Daddy might not be living in the same house? "I won't tell her," she said without turning around. "But that's the only promise I can make right now." She opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, closing it softly behind her. The sound of that door closing felt like the end of everything she had built her adult life on: her marriage, her friendship, her sense of who she was and where she belonged in the world. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and half-formed thoughts. Simone's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached, but she needed something solid to hold onto. Everything else in her world felt like it was floating away. She pulled into the driveway of the house she and David had bought 5 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom with a front porch and a backyard big enough for Nia to play in. The American flag David had hung last 4th of July still fluttered from the porch, and Nia's bicycle lay on its side in the grass where she had abandoned it that morning before school. Normal. Everything looked so perfectly normal. Simone sat in the car for several minutes, staring at the front door with its cheerful yellow paint and the welcome mat Mama Rose had crocheted for them last Christmas. This was supposed to be her safe place, her sanctuary. But how could it ever feel safe again knowing that David had been living a double life, coming home to this house and this family after being with another woman? The front door opened and Nia came running out, her backpack bouncing behind her. She had been staying with Mama Rose after school, as she did every Tuesday and Thursday when Simone worked late. Seeing her daughter's bright smile and hearing her excited voice calling "Mommy" broke something loose in Simone's chest. "Mama Rose made a sweet potato pie," Nia announced, throwing her arms around Simone's waist. "And she taught me how to braid cornbread dough. Can we make some this weekend?" Simone hugged her daughter tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo and the lingering smell of Mama Rose's kitchen that always clung to her clothes after these visits. This was real. This was pure. Whatever else had been destroyed today, Nia was still here, still innocent, still whole. "Of course, baby girl," Simone managed to say. "We can make whatever you want this weekend." Behind Nia, Mama Rose appeared in the doorway. At 76, she moved more slowly than she used to, but her eyes were still sharp, still capable of seeing straight through to the heart of any problem. She took one look at Simone's face and knew immediately that something was wrong. "Nia, honey, go wash your hands and start on your homework," Mama Rose said gently. "I need to talk to your mama for a minute." Nia skipped into the house, completely oblivious to the tension in the air. Simone envied her daughter's innocence, the way she could exist in a world where the worst thing that might happen was forgetting to feed her goldfish or missing her favorite TV show. "What happened, baby girl?" Mama Rose asked, using the same nickname she had called Simone since she was Nia's age. The story came pouring out of Simone like water from a broken dam. She told her grandmother everything, about walking into Rochelle's apartment, about seeing David, about the 6 months of lies and deception. Mama Rose listened without interrupting, her weathered hands folded in her lap, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When Simone finished talking, they sat in silence for several minutes. A neighbor was mowing their lawn across the street, and somewhere in the distance, children were laughing at a playground. Life was continuing as normal for everyone else while Simone's world had completely collapsed. "I don't know what to do," Simone finally whispered. "I don't know how to come back from this." Mama Rose reached over and took her granddaughter's hands in her own. They were soft and warm, hands that had worked hard all their life, cleaning houses, raising children, holding families together through every kind of storm imaginable. "First thing you need to do is breathe," Mama Rose said firmly. "This feels like the end of the world right now, but it's not. You're going to survive this, just like our family has survived everything else." "But how?" Simone asked. How do I forgive something like this? How do I ever trust either of them again? I'm not saying you should forgive them right now, Mama Rose replied. Forgiveness is a process, not a decision you make once and stick with. But I am saying you need to think real careful about what you want your life to look like moving forward. Simone thought about David and Rochelle sitting in that apartment, probably still talking about her, probably trying to figure out how to fix the unfixable. Part of her wanted to hate them both, to cut them out of her life completely and start over. But another part of her, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, was heartbroken at the thought of losing them both forever. They say they love me, Simone said bitterly. But you don't do this to someone you love. People are complicated, baby girl. Sometimes they do terrible things to the people they love most. Sometimes they're so broken inside themselves that they break everything around them too. Mama Rose paused, looking out at the street where a young couple was walking hand in hand, pushing a stroller. They looked happy, carefree, the way Simone had felt just this morning when the biggest problem in her life was whether to make chicken or fish for dinner. Your grandfather cheated on me once, Mama Rose said quietly. Simone's head snapped up in shock. In all her years, she had never heard this story. Her grandparents had been married for 52 years before Granddad died, and their love story had always been the gold standard in their family. It was during the early 70s, Mama Rose continued. Times were hard. He was working 3 jobs trying to keep food on the table, and I was pregnant with your daddy. He felt like he was failing as a man, failing as a provider. There was a woman at his night job who made him feel important, made him feel like he was somebody special. Simone couldn't imagine her gentle, loving grandfather betraying anyone, least of all Mama Rose. He had always treated her grandmother like a queen, bringing her flowers from the garden, singing to her while she cooked dinner, holding her hand during church services. How did you get past it? Simone asked. It wasn't easy, Mama Rose admitted. I put him out of the house for 3 months. Made him sleep on his sister's couch and think about what he had lost. Made him prove to me that he wanted to fight for our marriage. And he did. He showed up every day. Every single day for 3 months, he came to this house with flowers or groceries or some little thing he had made with his hands. He went to counseling by himself before I ever agreed to go with him. He wrote me letters telling me how sorry he was and how he was going to spend the rest of his life making it up to me. Mama Rose's eyes were distant, remembering those difficult months from 5 decades ago. But most importantly, he changed. Not just his behavior but his heart. He figured out why he had been so lost, why he had been willing to throw away everything we had built together for something that wasn't even real. And you were able to forgive him? Eventually. Not all at once, but piece by piece, day by day. And you know what? Our marriage was stronger after we got through that storm than it had ever been before. Because we both knew what it cost to almost lose each other. Simone tried to imagine herself forgiving David and Rochelle the way Mama Rose had forgiven her grandfather. Right now, it felt impossible. The betrayal was too fresh, the pain too sharp. But maybe with time. I'm not saying that's what you should do, Mama Rose said, reading her thoughts. Every situation is different, every person is different. I'm just saying don't make any permanent decisions while your heart is this broken. Give yourself time to think, time to heal, time to figure out what you really want. The front door opened and Nia poked her head out. Mama, I need help with my math homework. And I'm hungry. Can we have grilled cheese for dinner? Such simple requests from such an innocent heart. Simone looked at her daughter and felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. Whatever happened with David and Rochelle, she would make sure Nia continued to feel loved and safe and secure. I'll be right there, baby, Simone called out. Mama Rose stood up slowly, her joints protesting after sitting for so long. You're stronger than you know, Simone. You come from a long line of strong women. We don't break easy, and when we do break, we heal back even stronger. She hugged her granddaughter tightly, the same way she had hugged her after her parents' funeral, after her first heartbreak, after every disappointment and setback life had thrown her way. Take it one day at a time, Mama Rose whispered. And remember, no matter what happens, you've got family who loves you. That's something nobody can take away. After Mama Rose left, Simone sat in her kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches and listening to Nia chatter about her day at school. The normalcy of it was both comforting and surreal. How could she be having such an ordinary evening after such an extraordinary day? Her phone had been buzzing all afternoon with texts from David and missed calls from Rochelle, but she ignored them all. She wasn't ready to talk to either of them yet. She needed space to think, space to process what had happened and what it meant for her future. That night, after Nia was asleep, Simone sat on her bed staring at the framed photos on her dresser. Her wedding day, David looking handsome in his black tuxedo, her in the white. dress she had saved up for months to buy. Their honeymoon in Jamaica, both of them sunburned and laughing. Nia as a baby with David holding her while she slept. A life captured in photographs. A love story that had seemed so solid, so permanent. Now she didn't know which moments had been real and which had been lies. Had David been thinking about Rochelle when he told Simone he loved her? Had Rochelle been pretending to care about their marriage while she was actively destroying it? The questions swirled in her mind like a tornado, tearing apart everything she thought she knew about the people closest to her. She thought about what Mama Rose had said about forgiveness being a process, about giving herself time to heal before making permanent decisions. But some betrayals felt too big to forgive. Some wounds felt too deep to heal. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Simone wondered if she would ever again be able to look at David or Rochelle without seeing them together in that bathroom, without feeling that moment when her entire world had shifted on its axis. Some images, once burned into your memory, never fade. Some trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. 3 weeks passed like a strange, suspended dream. David had moved in with his brother temporarily, coming by every other day to see Nia and to try to talk to Simone. Their conversations were stilted and careful, like two people walking through a minefield, afraid that one wrong word would set off an explosion. Rochelle had called and texted dozens of times, but Simone hadn't answered. She wasn't ready to hear her best friend's voice, wasn't ready to pretend that 2 decades of friendship could survive this level of betrayal. Simone had thrown herself into work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects, anything to keep her mind busy. But at night, alone in the bed she had shared with David for over a decade, the thoughts came rushing back like a flood tide. It was on a Thursday evening while she was helping Nia with her science project about butterflies, that everything changed again. "Mama, why hasn't Auntie Rochelle come to see us lately?" Nia asked, carefully gluing construction paper wings to a coffee filter. "Is she sick?" Simone's hands stilled on the packet of glitter they were using to decorate the butterfly wings. She had been dreading this question, knowing it was only a matter of time before Nia noticed that her beloved auntie had disappeared from their lives. "Auntie Rochelle is going through some things right now, baby," Simone said carefully. "Sometimes adults need space to figure out their problems. Like when you and Daddy are figuring out your problems?" The innocence in her daughter's voice nearly broke Simone's heart. Nia had accepted David's temporary move to Uncle Jerome's house with the resilience that children possess, but she wasn't blind to the tension between her parents. "Something like that," Simone agreed. "I miss her," Nia said simply. "She always smells like flowers and she makes the best pancakes. And she was teaching me how to French braid my hair." Simone remembered those Saturday mornings when Rochelle would come over early, her arms full of groceries for breakfast, ready to spend the day with their little family. She would braid Nia's hair while Simone cooked, the three of them chattering and laughing like they had all the time in the world. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else now. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Through the peephole, Simone could see David standing on the front porch, but he wasn't alone. Dr. Angela Harris, a family counselor Mama Rose had recommended, stood beside him. Simone opened the door, her heart immediately racing. "What's going on? Is someone hurt?" "No, nobody's hurt," David said quickly. "But we need to talk. All of us. Dr. Harris has something important to tell you." Dr. Harris was a petite woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle manner. Simone had seen her twice on her own over the past 3 weeks, trying to process her feelings about the betrayal and figure out what she wanted to do with her marriage. "May we come in?" Dr. Harris asked. "There's something you need to know, something that changes everything." Against her better judgment, Simone let them in. Nia looked up from her butterfly project, her face lighting up when she saw her father. "Daddy, look at my butterfly. Mama helped me make it." David's face softened as he knelt down to examine his daughter's artwork. "It's beautiful, princess. You did such a good job." "Nia, why don't you take your project to your room to finish?" Simone suggested. "The grown-ups need to talk." After Nia disappeared upstairs, the 3 adults sat in the living room. Simone chose the chair farthest from David, still not ready to be too close to him. The hurt was still too raw, too immediate. "Before we start," Dr. Harris said gently, "I want you to know that what I'm about to tell you doesn't excuse anyone's choices. Actions have consequences and betrayal is betrayal, no matter the circumstances. But there are some things you don't know, things that might help you understand what really happened." Simone felt her stomach clench. "What things?" Dr. Harris looked at David, who nodded for her to continue. "David came to see me alone last week," she began. He wanted to tell me something that he had been too ashamed to tell anyone, including you. Something that happened before the affair began. What? Simone's voice was barely above a whisper. 6 months ago, David was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety, Dr. Harris said gently. He had been struggling for over a year with feelings of worthlessness, panic attacks, and what he describes as a complete loss of his sense of self. Simone stared at David in shock. Depression? Anxiety? In all their years together, she had never seen any signs of mental illness. David had always been the strong one, the stable one, the one who held their family together when times got tough. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice cracking. David's eyes filled with tears. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought it made me weak. Because I grew up hearing that black men don't have mental health problems, we just push through and keep going. It was true. David's father had been a man of the old school. Someone who believed that emotions were weakness and that real men solved their problems through hard work and prayer, not therapy and medication. I was having panic attacks at work, David continued. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I felt like I was disappearing, like I wasn't a real person anymore. And I was terrified that if you knew, you would think less of me. Simone tried to process this information. Looking back, she could see signs she had missed. The way David had been losing weight, the way he had been quieter than usual, the way he had seemed to withdraw from family activities that he used to enjoy. The affair wasn't about romance or passion, Dr. Harris continued. It was about two people who were both struggling with depression and loneliness, finding comfort in each other in completely inappropriate ways. Rochelle was depressed too? Simone asked. David nodded. After Marcus left her, she started having what she calls dark days. Days when she couldn't get out of bed, when everything felt hopeless. That's why she was at the doctor so much last year. She was trying different medications, different treatments. Simone remembered all the times Rochelle had canceled plans last year, claiming she was sick. She remembered the weight loss, the way her friend had seemed fragile and distant sometimes. She had attributed it to heartbreak over Marcus, never imagining it was something deeper and more serious. The night of Mama Rosa's birthday party, David continued, we were both in such dark places mentally. We weren't thinking clearly, weren't making rational decisions. We were just two broken people trying not to drown. But it continued for 6 months, Simone said. That wasn't just one night of poor judgment. No, it wasn't, Dr. Harris agreed. And that's where the mental health issues become even more relevant. People with untreated depression often engage in self-destructive behaviors. They do things that they know are wrong because part of them believes they deserve to be punished. David leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Every time we were together, I hated myself more. Every lie I told you, every secret I kept, it felt like proof that I was the terrible person my depression told me I was. And Rochelle felt the same way, Dr. Harris added. She describes the affair as emotional cutting, hurting herself because she believed she deserved to be hurt. Simone felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet again, but in a different way this time. The betrayal still hurt just as much, but now it was layered with sadness and regret and a deep, aching sympathy for two people she loved who had been suffering in silence. Why didn't either of you come to me? She asked. Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me you were struggling? Because we were sick, David said simply. Mental illness lies to you. It tells you that you're alone, that nobody could possibly understand or care about your pain, that you're a burden to everyone you love. Dr. Harris nodded. Depression is a disease that isolates people from their support systems. It convinces them that they have to handle everything alone, that asking for help is weakness. Simone thought about all the times over the past year when she had asked David how he was doing and he had answered with a quick fine, or just tired. She thought about all the times she had offered to listen if he needed to talk, and he had brushed her off with a smile and a kiss on the forehead. She thought about Rochelle, always so put together, always so strong, never letting on that she was falling apart inside. Are you getting help now? She asked David. He nodded. I've been seeing Dr. Harris twice a week since the day you found out about the affair. I'm on medication and I'm learning coping strategies. For the first time in over a year, I feel like myself again. And Rochelle? She's getting help too. She wanted to be here tonight, but Dr. Harris thought it would be better if we talked first, just the three of us. Simone sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by this new information. The betrayal still hurt, nothing could change that, but now she understood it in a completely different context. This hadn't been about David choosing Rochelle over her, or about Rochelle deciding to steal her best friend's husband. This had been about two people drowning in their own pain and grabbing onto each other instead of reaching for the lifelines that were right there waiting for them. "I need to ask you something," she said to David. "And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Anything," he said immediately. "If you hadn't been depressed, if you had been thinking clearly, would this have happened?" David didn't hesitate. "Never. Simone, you are the love of my life. You are my anchor, my safe place, my everything. The only reason I didn't turn to you when I was struggling is because the disease in my brain convinced me that I would be hurting you by burdening you with my problems. And now I know that's not true. Now I know that marriage means facing the hard stuff together, not protecting each other from it. Now I know that you're stronger than my depression gave you credit for." Dr. Harris spoke up. "I want to be clear about something. Mental illness explains behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. David and Rochelle made choices, and those choices had consequences. The work now is figuring out how to move forward in a way that honors everyone's feelings and needs." "What does that look like?" Simone asked. "That's up to you," Dr. Harris replied. "But I will say this, in my 30 years of practice, I've seen couples recover from infidelity when both parties are willing to do the hard work of rebuilding trust. It's not easy and it takes time, but it's possible." Simone looked at David, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. She could see the difference in his face, the way the shadows under his eyes had lifted, the way he seemed more present, more like himself than he had in months. "I'm not ready to make any decisions tonight," she said finally. "This is a lot to process." "I understand," David said. "I just want you to know that I'm fighting for us. I'm fighting for our family. I'm getting the help I need, and I'm committed to being the husband and father you both deserve." "And Rochelle? She wants to fight for your friendship too, but she understands that might not be possible. She knows she broke something precious and she's prepared to live with the consequences." After David and Dr. Harris left, Simone sat alone in her living room, surrounded by the detritus of her daughter's art project, bits of construction paper and drops of glue and tiny specks of glitter that caught the light like stars. Mental illness, depression, anxiety. Words that reframed everything she thought she knew about the past year. Words that explained so much about David's distance, about Rochelle's fragility, about the way they had both been acting like different versions of themselves. It didn't excuse what they had done, but it helped her understand why they had done it. And understanding, she was beginning to realize, might be the first step toward healing. 2 months later, Simone stood in the backyard of Mama Rose's house, watching Nia chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. The late summer air was thick with the scent of magnolia blossoms and the sound of children playing in neighboring yards. It was the kind of evening that felt suspended between seasons, between endings and new beginnings. "She looks happy," a familiar voice said behind her. Simone turned to see Rochelle standing at the back gate, her hands fidgeting with the latch. She looked thinner than before, more fragile, but there was something different in her eyes, a clarity that had been missing for a long time. "She is happy," Simone replied. "Kids are resilient that way." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, two women who had shared everything for 24 years now struggling to find words for the simplest conversation. "How are you doing?" Rochelle asked finally. "Better," Simone said honestly. "Some days are harder than others, but I'm getting stronger." It was true. The past 2 months had been the hardest of Simone's life, but they had also been transformative. She had continued her sessions with Dr. Harris, working through her feelings of betrayal, anger, and grief. She had learned about depression and anxiety, about how mental illness can change people in ways that are invisible to those who love them. She had also learned about forgiveness, not as a one-time decision, but as a daily choice to release anger and choose healing instead. "I've been wanting to talk to you," Rochelle said. "To explain, to apologize, to try to make sense of what I did to our friendship." Simone gestured to 2 lawn chairs under the old oak tree. "Mama Rose is making sweet tea. We could sit for a while." As if summoned by her words, the back door opened and Mama Rose appeared with a tray holding 3 glasses of ice-cold sweet tea and a plate of her famous sugar cookies. She set the tray on the small table between the chairs and squeezed Rochelle's shoulder gently. "It's good to see you, child," she said simply. "You look like you're taking better care of yourself." Rochelle's eyes filled with tears at the kindness in Mama Rose's voice. "Thank you for not hating me," she whispered. "I don't have room in my heart for hate," Mama Rose replied. "Too much love already taking up space." After Mama Rose went back inside, Rochelle and Simone sat watching Nia play, both of them working up the courage to have the conversation they had been avoiding for months. "I need you to know that I never meant for it to happen," Rochelle began. I never woke up one morning and decided to betray my best friend. I know, Simone said quietly. Dr. Harris helped me understand about the depression, about how it changes the way people think and make decisions. But that doesn't make it okay, Rochelle said quickly. Mental illness might explain what I did, but it doesn't excuse it. I made choices, and those choices hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for. Simone sipped her tea, choosing her words carefully. I've been thinking a lot about choices lately. About the choices you and David made, but also about the choices I made. What do you mean? I mean that I chose to be so busy with work and Nia and Mama Rose that I didn't notice when the two people I loved most were falling apart. I chose to accept, "I'm fine," as an answer when you both were clearly not fine. I chose to believe that love meant giving people space instead of pushing for the truth. Rochelle shook her head. Simone, you can't blame yourself for what we did. I'm not blaming myself for the affair, Simone clarified. That was your choice and David's choice. But I am taking responsibility for being emotionally unavailable to the people I loved. For being so focused on being strong and independent that I forgot how to be vulnerable and connected. It was a realization that had come slowly, through weeks of therapy and honest self-reflection. Simone had always prided herself on being the one who had it all together, the one everyone else could lean on. But she had never learned how to let others support her in return. I should have told you about the depression, Rochelle said. I should have trusted you with my darkness instead of hiding it. And I should have noticed it anyway, Simone replied. Best friends are supposed to see past the masks we wear. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Nia's unsuccessful attempts to catch fireflies in a mason jar. The little girl was laughing with delight every time one of the glowing insects slipped through her fingers, completely unbothered by her lack of success. What happens now? Rochelle asked finally. Between us, I mean. Simone had been asking herself the same question for weeks. The rational part of her brain said that some betrayals were too big to forgive, that some friendships couldn't survive this level of broken trust. But her heart kept reminding her of 24 years of love and laughter, of shared secrets and mutual support, of a bond that had survived everything else life had thrown at them. I don't know if we can go back to the way things were, Simone said honestly. Too much has changed. But maybe we can build something new, something different but still good. I would like that, Rochelle said, her voice thick with emotion. I would like that more than anything. The back door opened again and this time David stepped out. He moved carefully, like someone walking on thin ice, still unsure of his welcome in spaces that had once been as familiar as his own home. Daddy? Nia called out, abandoning her firefly hunt to run into his arms. Look how many I almost caught. David swept his daughter up in a hug, his face lighting up with genuine joy for the first time in months. Almost counts, he said seriously. Almost is where all the best adventures start. Simone watched her husband with their daughter and felt something loosen in her chest. The medication and therapy had brought back the man she had fallen in love with, the one who could find magic in everyday moments, who could make their daughter feel like the most important person in the world. Can I join you? He asked, looking between Simone and Rochelle uncertainly. Simone nodded toward an empty chair. We're just talking. Trying to figure out how to move forward. David sat down, keeping Nia on his lap. I owe you both an apology, he said. Not just for the affair but for shutting you out when I was struggling. For making you feel like you had failed me somehow when the truth was that I was failing myself. We all made mistakes, Simone said. The question is what we do now. I want to come home, David said quietly. If you'll have me. I want to work every day to rebuild your trust and to be the husband and father I should have been all along. Simone looked at her family, her daughter playing contentedly in her father's arms, her best friend sitting nervously in the chair beside her husband looking at her with hope and love and newfound determination. 6 months ago, she would have said this moment was impossible. The betrayal had felt too big, the broken trust too complete. But she had learned something over the past few months about the difference between being broken and being shattered. Broken things could be repaired, could be made whole again, sometimes even stronger than they were before. Shattered things were gone forever. Her marriage wasn't shattered. Her friendship wasn't shattered. They were broken, yes, but broken could be fixed with enough time and effort and love. There would have to be conditions, she said to David. Continued therapy, complete transparency, no more secrets about anything ever. Done, he said immediately. She turned to Rochelle. And we would have to start over. Rebuild our friendship from the ground up, earn each other's trust again. I understand, Rochelle said. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And all of us, Simone continued, looking between them, would have to commit to being honest about our feelings, our needs, our struggles. No more protecting each other by hiding the truth. Both David and Rochelle nodded solemnly. Nia, who had been listening to this conversation with the intense concentration that children bring to adult discussions they don't quite understand, suddenly spoke up. "Does this mean Daddy's coming home?" she asked. "And Auntie Rochelle will make pancakes again?" The three adults looked at each other and started laughing, the first real laughter they had shared in months. Leave it to a child to cut through all the complexity and get straight to what really mattered. "Yes, baby girl," Simone said, reaching over to smooth her daughter's hair. "Daddy's coming home. And maybe if we all work really hard at being a family again, Auntie Rochelle will make pancakes." As the fireflies began to blink more slowly and Nia's eyelids grew heavy against her father's chest, Simone felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not the naive hope that pretended painful things hadn't happened, but the mature hope that believed healing was possible, that love could survive even the deepest wounds. "It won't be easy," she said to both of them. "There will be hard days, days when the anger comes back, days when trust feels impossible. But we'll face those days together," David said firmly. "All of us," Rochelle added. "As a family." Mama Rose appeared in the doorway as if she had been listening for the right moment to interrupt. "Y'all better come inside before these mosquitoes eat you alive," she called out. "And Nia needs to get ready for bed." As they gathered up the tea glasses and headed toward the house, Simone felt her grandmother's hand on her arm. "I'm proud of you, baby girl," Mama Rose whispered. "You chose love over fear, forgiveness over bitterness. That takes a strength most people never find." "I had a good teacher," Simone replied, squeezing her grandmother's hand. Inside the house, while David helped Nia with her bedtime routine and Rochelle helped wash the tea glasses, Simone stood in the doorway watching her family slowly knit itself back together. It would be different now, scarred in places, more careful in others, but it would be theirs. Some stories end with dramatic reconciliations and passionate declarations of love. But this story ended the way most real healing happens, quietly, gradually, with ordinary moments that add up to extraordinary grace. David moved back home the following weekend. Rochelle started coming by for Sunday dinners again, though she and Simone were careful to rebuild their friendship slowly, honestly. They all continued therapy individually and together, learning new ways to communicate, new ways to support each other through difficult times. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when Simone felt the sharp stab of betrayal, still days when trust felt fragile and incomplete. But there were more moments when she felt grateful for second chances, for the capacity of the human heart to heal, for the possibility of love that was deeper and more authentic than what they had shared before. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning that dawned clear and bright, Simone woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. She found David and Nia making pancakes with Rochelle, all three of them covered in flour and completely absorbed in their task. "Mama," Nia called out when she saw her in the doorway. "Auntie Rochelle taught me how to flip pancakes and I only dropped one on the floor." "Only one?" Simone said with mock amazement. "You're getting good at this." David caught her eye across the kitchen and smiled, the kind of smile that said he knew how lucky they all were to have found their way back to this ordinary, extraordinary moment. Simone smiled back, then joined her family around the stove, ready to help make breakfast and continue the beautiful, messy, imperfect work of loving each other well.